So how long have you been dancing, and do you primarily lead or follow?
I've been dancing since 1998, and I primarily follow.
Now, why do you dance, and why did you start?
I started dancing just for like social reasons, meeting people, getting out, and because I liked the music. And also, like, it was kind of a cool, hip thing to do then. It was that, retro swing revival. So it just seemed exciting and like a fun way to get out and meet people and do stuff. Um, Now I dance more because of the way it makes me feel. Like I just really like the joy that it brings me to move that way. It's less of a social thing. I mean, it's still a social thing because I have a lot of friends and I like to see them, but I don't have as much impetus to get out and see people. I've got a family and everything. So I do it mostly because it feels really, really good.
Now, how would you describe blues dancing?
I describe blues dancing as a family of African American vernacular dances that started probably in the late 1890s, early 1900s, done to blues music. It's related definitely to other African American vernacular dances. The one we know the most about is swing dancing. I mean, the one that's probably the most popular. Um, but it's simpler in its footwork, I would say. Sometimes not simpler in its body mechanics, but instead of having a 6 count pattern or 8 count pattern, you're more with a 2 count pattern. Yeah, that's probably it.
Now, where do you dance, and how do your experiences with blues dancing vary from one space to another?
I mostly dance now at social dances organized by dancers in either studios or ballroom venues. Um, I rarely dance in clubs anymore because the music's usually too late for me. But I actually liked dancing in clubs better. Um, I like the live music. And even when they have live music at social dances organized by social dancers, the venue's big, obviously, because you want to get a lot of people. But I like the small club atmosphere. It felt better for me.
Now, has blues dancing changed since you first began?
Absolutely, positively. Yeah, when I first began blues dancing, I think most people were doing it because they'd been at a Lindy Hop exchange all night long and it was 2 or 3 in the morning and they were tired and they wanted slower music. So at that time, it was basically a way to slow dance with people. Now there's been a lot more research into the actual dances that were created back in the day and a lot more thought and effort put into technique. So it's definitely changed.
Now, how does dancing with different partners impact your experience?
Everyone is different, and every song is different, even with the same partner. So yeah, it's different every time based on partner and the song.
In your opinion, do men and women experience dancing differently?
Wow, that's really hard to say. I only know how I experience it as a woman. Um, I mean, as far as the actual mechanics of the dance itself or the good feeling inside, I bet our experience isn't dramatically different, especially because men can lead and women can follow. And so you could actually kind of feel in your body how it feels different. Um, I think at the lower levels of dancing, like at a more beginning level, men and women may experience it differently if the women are only following and the men are only leading. because a follow at a beginning level may feel more like the dance is done to her. But as you get to more advanced levels, I feel just as creative and just as much as I contribute to the dance as any lead. Socially, I think there probably are a lot of differences between how men and women experience the dance thing.
Now, how would you describe the dynamic of lead and follow, in blues dancing specifically?
I think the leader gives a structure to the dance. You've probably heard the analogy before, like the leader puts up, the walls, and then the follow decorates it. Do I want to paint the walls blue or pink? Do I want to hang curtains or not? Do I want the room to be minimal, or do I want it to be like elaborate and baroque? So I think that's a pretty good illustration. The leader gives some basics of direction and timing and things like that the follow goes with for the most part, and the follow gives comments on it. Although I feel like that's a little bit of selling the follow short. There's so much that a follow can do with timing, and so much that a follow can do with the give and take of tension with the leader and her own personal styling, that it really becomes a mutually creative experience. And I don't feel like in the advanced levels that one role gets more creation than the other.
Now, how would you describe femininity and masculinity?
I mean, in general, I guess the way the terms seem to be used culturally is femininity are things that, mostly happen in a woman's body, roundness, curves, softness, sweetness, demureness, those sorts of things. And masculinity are things that we have come to expect culturally to happen in a man's body: strength, determination, aggressiveness, more straight lines, that sort of thing.
So how about feminine and masculine movement? What would that look like?
I think that is something that we've come to define based on traditional or cultural ideas about what is feminine and masculine. So it's those same characteristics, but put in terms of movement. So movement for feminine would be movement that's round, that's soft, that's slow, that's meandering, that maybe is demure or shy or coy or tempting or seductress, that sort of thing. Whereas masculine movement would be movement that is aggressive or angular or sharp or speedy or determined. Yeah.
Now, what do you think the pros and cons of teaching gendered movement are?
For me, the biggest con is that it in some ways reinforces the stereotype that women are feminine and feminine is soft or round, or men are masculine and masculine is aggressive. It's a little bit different than we say, okay, I want you to walk across the room, and this time I'd like you to walk across the room in a way that is like the color blue. There's not a lot of cultural crap tied to the color blue. So, it's okay to go ahead and use that example because, blue is blue. But when you say, I want you to walk across the room in a way that's feminine, there's a lot of cultural crap tied to what feminine is and what feminine isn't, and is that right and is that wrong, or is that good and is that bad. So when I teach someone to do feminine movement and I rely upon the original cultural definitions of that, in some ways I reinforce the cultural definitions of that. Even when I say, This is based on traditional definition of femininity, traditional definitions that came up in a culture at a time when this dance was invented. It still, in some ways, reinforces that definition, and that is unfortunate because feminine can be strong, feminine can be aggressive, feminine can be sharp and determined as well.
Now, do you feel there are any pros to teaching gendered movement?
Because we were raised in this culture with the definitions that we were raised with, I think a lot of times people can relate to that easily. They can say, oh yeah, feminine movement, I know what that looks like in my head. I'm going to soften my movements. I'm going to move more slowly, more meandering. Masculine movement, I know what that looks like in my head. I've got an idea because of the culture of what I see to be traditionally or stereotypically masculine. I'm going to be in your face, and I'm going to be aggressive with my movement or sharp with my movement. So it's kind of an easy fallback. You know, people can get a picture of that really quickly.
Do you feel you embody any masculine or feminine characteristics when you dance?
I think my movement tends toward feminine. That's just the way my body's built, and that's just the way I move more easily. I definitely push myself to dance masculine because I think it broadens my dance. But if I were just turned loose in the wild, I definitely have more round movements, more meandering movements, softer movements. I usually dance in a more complementary manner than a determined manner.
And is that the same when you're leading, if you do lead?
Yes, the times that I try to lead, I think my leading looks a little more feminine, yeah, even though I have to make determinations about direction and speed and timing. I think still I look pretty feminine doing it.
In what ways do you express your gender identity while dancing? Do your movements, clothing choices, and/or character reflect your gender?
Yeah, I think I'm just one of those kind of traditional people that I just like default into that role. Definitely my movements just project the feminine round. Yeah, sultry, seductive, coy, shy, meandering movements, soft movements. It just kind of happens naturally for me.
Now, what shoes do you wear when you dance?
I wear heels.
And what makes you choose what types of shoes to wear?
It's kind of a cross between comfort and look and how it feels when I move in them. So it's a couple factors. Unfortunately, I think comfort is the least factor.
Do you feel you accentuate your femininity or masculinity for competition or performance?
No more than I do regularly. I think I rely on that characteristic about the same amount in social dancing as I do in competition or performance, unless the performance is scripted in a way to rely on a character that is like uber feminine. Like, say, it's like a man and a woman telling a story about like a breakup or a love story or something like that. Then I might over accentuate the femininity to get out the feminine character.
Are there any performances you've done that you can think of that would really illustrate that?
Oh, yeah, definitely the Barrel House Blues performance that I did with Dexter. I think that is just completely masculine and feminine character, which is funny too, because there's something about her movement on later in the performance that moves away from the like softness of it, but it's still like uber feminine. She's just like sassy and tempting, and I'm not going to let you have the last say sort of thing, but it's still uber feminine.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think about dancers accentuating masculinity or femininity for competition or performance, maybe from a judge's perspective?
I think it's totally fine if it goes with the music. If someone's in a competition and the music has a strong feminine part or a strong masculine part, either by the storyline or what you're hearing from the instrumentation, I think that's extremely appropriate for them to do. And in performance, even more so, if you're creating two characters. I think it's great. Blues is about telling stories in the music, so I don't know why the dance shouldn't be as well.
Do you believe age is a factor in how a person might express their gender on the dance floor?
It could be. I would think that men and women, as they age, probably get a lot more laid back about experimenting with other gender roles, and might feel more comfortable in exploring different kind of movement in their bodies.
Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share on anything we talked about or didn't talk about?
I think for me as an instructor, I'm always torn by this conversation, because I really believe a person should be able to dance however they want to dance. And I really believe that we don't even have to label what that is. But as an instructor, it is really hard to teach things without labeling it. Analogies and metaphors often give the best examples for people to figure out how to move their body. Also, I want to respect the culture that created this dance and this music. And they had very strong and prescribed gender roles. I don't want to carry those forward, but I don't want to pretend that they didn't exist. Also, too, it's not always bad. There's some fun things that can come out of the interaction in the dance and out of the way you move your body by exploring an uber feminine character and an uber masculine character. So I find it as an instructor and as someone who wants to promote the dance and promote education and respect for the history, it's like a fine line to walk between what do we need to preserve, what do we need to honor, what do we need to move forward with. Mm-hmm. And I certainly don't want to reinforce negative gender stereotypes by promoting this dance. On the other hand, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I find it difficult sometimes to straddle that line.
Right. I feel like you and Dexter do a really good job of that in your masculine and feminine movement class that you've been teaching over the last year or two. Do you want to describe that?
That class, I think we begin with the concept that these roles or concepts or character movements that we're teaching, masculine movement, feminine movement, is based on characters that have a cultural background in the dance, a cultural stereotype from when these dances were created. And that doesn't mean that men can't dance feminine and women can't dance masculine. And it doesn't mean that women are only soft and demure and coy and all that. I mean, women can be aggressive too. And feminine movement could be aggressive. Mm-hmm. So I think we couch the class in a lot of disclaimers to say, hey, this is just a tool. And it's one way of looking at it. I mean, many classes are built that way. we're going to try on this thing at the first of the class, and we're only going to play with it for a whole hour. And you're going to play with it really hard, and you're going to immerse yourself in it deeply. And then when you leave this class, you're going to go out in the real world, and you're going to take what suits you and leave what doesn't. So it's kind of an exercise more than it is the gospel.
Mm-hmm.